Hey YouTube, Puff and Snuff here. Ian checking in as always from beautiful Northeast Ohio. This is take 4 of this video. I have been interrupted by a pissed off bulldog, a phone call from work, and a microphone that I didn't know I didn't turn on. So let's see if we can get this one right. It is Snuff review time. It is a very exciting Snuff review time. Going to start digging into the open source project Snuffs. This is the brainchild of Chris, who you may know better from his YouTube channel, In a Pinch. He's launched 3 blends to start, named batch number 1, batch number 2, and shockingly enough, batch number 3. Today we're talking batch number 1. Batch number 1 is a mentholated blend. The other 2 are not, but this one is mentholated. So a quick personal note, I find menthol to be a tricky thing. Anybody who uses menthol knows that there's a thing, the menthol rebound, right? Where yes, it opens you up and it's cooling and refreshing, but if you use too much of it, your sinuses will start to swell and start to clog up, and you'll get a very stuffy feeling from it. Very much the opposite of what you want menthol to do. I seem to be more prone to this than other people, so I have to be awfully judicious and just take a very light hand in my use of mentholated blends. So what I'm looking for, and because reviews are subjective things, my personal tastes run to are mentholated blends where menthol is not the main player. It's used relatively sparingly. It serves its purpose, gets out of the way. So disclaimers out of the way. Let's start talking about the snuff a little bit. That's pissed off bulldog number 2. Let's see. So here's your tin, right? If we can get that to focus a little bit. There we go. Nice, classy art on the front. And you probably cannot see that on the webcam, but I think it's on his website and possibly in the newsletter. So there are better places to see what that looks like. Beyond that, there is not a whole lot of muss or fuff to the tin. These are limited releases, at least for now, so he has numbered the tins. This happens to be, as you can see, tin 2 out of 49. Focus, there we go. The tins are a nice, heavy metal tin, not flimsy at all. These are certainly sturdier than the Toke tins as a comparison. And it's a decent size. Just to compare it, that's a standard Zippo lighter. So it's a decent sized tin. And he's asking $9 for a tin this size, which is for the amount of snuff you get, and he packs these things full. For the amount of snuff you get, $9 for an artisan snuff is a remarkably good price. I think shipping was $7. That was for 3 tins. I don't know if 7 is a flat rate or if it goes up or down if you order more or fewer tins. I don't know. For that information, contact Chris at ospsnuff@gmail.com. Get on his mailing list, get the ordering information, and all that stuff. So let's get into the tin. It smells so good. The color may be hard to see in this light, but it's a medium light cocoa brown. This is not a light brown snuff the way a lot of Tokes are that light brown, but it is certainly not a dark brown or near black snuff by any stretch. The grind on this, it is certainly on the fine side of medium. It is definitely not toast fine or Scotch fine, but medium fine is where I'd put it, and it is relatively dry, which is kind of strange, I think, for menthol. So my first, inclination when taking a mentholated blend is to take a big old pinch and just suck buckets full of it up the nose. You don't want to do this here because of the grind and the dryness. You want to approach this with a little bit of care. Don't go for the big, huge softball-sized pinches. I'm going to get some of this warming up. And while that's doing that, let me first of all, in the tin, what I love about this and what makes this work for me is the first thing I smell is not menthol. The first thing I smell is a general natural sweetness. This isn't a sugary, cloying, candied sweetness at all. Uh, it's a very natural sweetness coming in large part from the tobacco leaf. And then you get a bready and a somewhat nutty isn't quite the right word, but that's about the closest I'm going to get. But the predominant aroma to me is sweet leaf. And then, as you kind of get into it, the menthol starts to come out and say hello a little bit. So just to shoot over real quick and read Chris's description to read through it. The tobacco, he's got aged burley, Dominican Ligero, and bright leaf Virginia. Partially blackened, as he puts it, fermented to high hell, cased in Guinness, sandwiched between screens of fresh crushed cedar. Then he adds some more cedar oil and some menthol. So to break that down a little bit, aged burley is going to bring some nicotine for sure. Dominican Ligero, this is a cigar leaf. It comes from the top leaves of the plant. Generally speaking, it is a more robust, more bold flavor and strength from the top leaves. Then the bright leaf is the Virginia. Okay, Guinness. We all know Guinness. It's a wonderful thing. Fresh crushed cedar. I'm guessing the reason he's crushing it rather than using cedar planks is to release more of the natural oils. That's just a guess. I do not know. Chris, if you see this video, answer that question. In the spirit of this being open sourced, why are we crushing the cedar rather than using cedar planks? And then the extra cedar oil and, of course, the menthol. So that's what's in it. Let's see what it does in the nose. I warmed this in my palm, and I'm taking a pinch. Normally, I would warm it on a boxcar, but because of the grind, I want a little more control of the placement and the release of the tobacco itself. So I'm going pinch on this. It is so nice. Unlike the tin, the first thing you do get in the nose is the menthol, but it is not incredibly strong at all. It is sharp. It is a sharper menthol, but there's not a lot of it, and it fades really, really quickly. In fact, by now, the cooling sensation is still there, but the menthol aroma has almost completely faded. And what it leaves behind, the first thing I get is that sweetness that I picked up from the tin. And I think that sweetness is coming, one, from the fact that, as he put it, fermented this to high hell. Ligero leaf and the bright leaf have a good bit of sugar in them, especially the bright leaf. And as they ferment, those sugars are going to release and make the tobacco itself very, very sweet. And there is a further sweetness in there that I think is probably coming from the maltiness of the Guinness that he applies to it. There's something dark about it too, which again, some of that comes from the tobacco, but not quite chocolatey and not quite dark fruity, but something kind of in the middle for me, which I personally, again, am going to attribute to the leaf itself. The cedar and the cedar oil are interesting things. The cedar to me is not an exceptionally strong aroma, but it certainly adds to everything else. Every now and then, that cedar comes forward just a little bit, and it's kind of like, between the tobacco and the cedar, it's kind of like opening up a humidor and then shutting it real quick, and you get that little puff of air, that cedary, tobacco-y, puff. But just for a second, this is not a cigar and cedar snuff by any stretch. But you get that just a little bit here and there, and it's really, really cool how it does that. But the dominant scent for me is a natural sweetness, a natural darkness, and then that cedar that just kind of carries through it quite as well. I don't know that the cedar or the Guinness ever stand out too much on their own, but I think that the tobacco leaf does what it does in this blend because of those adjuncts. So it's a really, really well done blend. I'm going to top off here before I wrap up. So nicotine, we got to talk nicotine. You can't talk snuff without mentioning it. This is not a nicotine bomb, but the nicotine is certainly there, and it is noticeable. You know, you're not gonna black out from a pinch. This is certainly not. Oh, it is so good. You know, this isn't like one of the Indian whites or anything like that, but it's noticeable, and if you need a little bump, it will get you there. The drip, you got to talk drip. There's a lot of it. Okay, so you're going to want to have a handkerchief available because this drips, and it drips both directions. It's not altogether unpleasant, but I think the only thing for me about this blend that is not absolute top-notch is the back drip. It's not super clawing or sandpapery or grating at all, but there is a little bit of a sting to the back drip, which to me comes, I'm guessing, comes from the menthol. It doesn't strike me as being a balance issue with the pH or anything like that. I think it's just, for me, I'm not used to a lot of mentholated back drip, and I think that's what I'm picking up, which is, for me, maybe not ideal, but it certainly is not something that can ruin the overall experience. And boy, does this runs. This really does run, and I think that's a combination of the menthol and the added cedar oil probably make this thing really move and groove on you. So how do I want to rate this? Well, for me, in my nose, this is a 7 on a bad day and 8 on a good day. And again, that's from a guy who is not the biggest fan of menthols, generally speaking. I think if you are a lover of menthol, and I think that this could be quickly become a favorite snuff if you really, really, really enjoy menthol. For me, this is about the only mentholated blend that I would care to always have available and on hand. So for me, those are very high marks if it's a menthol that I want more of. Very non-clogging, very, very pleasant, very well done, Chris. You know, we've talked. You know my stance on mentholated blends and the problems it causes me. I get none of that from this. You did a hell of a job, buddy. Congratulations on this one. And for everyone else, spoiler alert, I've tried all 3 blends. This is my least favorite of the 3. The other 2, to me, are even more outstanding than this one. You know, one last note, guys, keep in mind this is not a shill job. I do consider Chris a friend, and I am very excited for this project and really want it to succeed, but this is not high praise for any reason other than it really is a remarkable snuff. I paid the same amount for these tins as you're going to pay for yours. If I didn't mention it earlier, he's asking $9 for that, which $9 for that much artisan snuff is a remarkably good price. Take advantage of that. I'll put the email address again down in the description, but it's ospsnuff@gmail.com. Get a hold of Chris. You're going to want to try this while it's available. So, guys, that is all for me. Super excited. Cannot wait to get on here and review batches numbers 2 and number 3. That's all for me. Take it easy.